at Delhi. After 2 years, we had a international in-person conference, and we had a good time. So hope to see you again somewhere, maybe in virtual mode.
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, good evening, sir. Prof. Mkdutta, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm going to introduce a few things about you, sir, to the participants. Dear participants, this Sir Minnal Kantidas, Minnal Kantidatta is a eminent professor in the University of IIT Guwahati. Previously, he worked in the Developmental University from 95 to 2003, and from 2003 onwards, he's continuing services in the IIT Guwahati. And coming to his research contribution, he published 2 books and 35 articles in journals and 16 book chapters. And his experience in research projects, nearly 7 projects and which are funded by the ICS and Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Assam Ministry of Environment and Forest, and he organized very workshops and conferences which are funded by the various institutions, and other responsibilities and awards. Coming to that part, is a member of 6th Assam State Finance Commission 2019, and a member of Academic Council Governance Nominee, and a member of Executive Council and Court Assam Rajiv Gandhi University of Cooperative Management, member Academic Research Council Cotton University from 2019 to 22, and member Board of Studies Department of Economics Mizoram University, Cotton University as well, and member Assam Higher Education Council in the year 2012 and 14, and executive member of Indian Society of Agricultural Economics 2021-23, executive member of the Indian Economic Society since 2013 to 2017, secretary of Northeastern Economic Association 2010 to 12, 12 to 14. So is a review of Journal of Economic Policy Reforms, relevant branches. So there are some more membership in the professional bodies. So this is a small introduction about this eminent professor. So please be concentrate on his lectures and all. Sir, please take the platform.
I can share the screen, Professor Rao, Professor Ramkrishna.
Yes, sir.
Can I share the screen?
Sure, sir. Sure. Please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is the screen visible?
Sir, so try to change the slides as well, sir.
Is it fine now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
First of all, thank you very much. Actually, it's my pleasure to be part of this refresher course organized by Human Resource Development Center of Mizoram University. And I thank Professor Jyoti Kumar, who has actually given me the invitation for being part of this particular program. I'm very happy that actually there was another program which actually, in fact, resulted in some delay initially, but later on I could manage the time well. So I thought that I'll not be able to start on this lecture in time. But anyhow, so I am lucky that I could finish off the previous assignment, and I am here. And in fact, so when you talk about this refresher course, actually, you see all people who are part of the refresher course, so they are actually experienced teachers, researchers, and they know many of the things out there. On our job and responsibilities will only be to refresh yourself a little bit. I have not chosen a very theoretical concept or theoretical issue to be discussed in this forum. I've taken a very generic topic in a sense, which actually all of us know very well. All of us can take part. And since this is a kind of, I feel it's a kind of post-lunch kind of a session, so where you probably will not be interested too much in theoretical issues. So I thought of having some discussion with you on the state of Indian economy. As all of us know that the economic situation after COVID-19, which started in 2019, is not very good all over the world. Most of the countries had witnessed a recession or maybe contraction in their economy. And under that situation, would like to have a look at how Indian economy is performing. Of course, I'll try to have a look at the performance of Indian economy over a period of time, not only in the recent few years, but also, okay, before that, before COVID struck the Indian economy, and right now how it is performing. All of us know it very well. We'll try to have a look at some of the issues which might require some attention out there. I believe I am audible to you. You can hear me, I believe. So this is the scheme of presentation that I have. Of course, all of us, all the participants are from the background of commerce, economics, and management. All of you have ideas about growth, development, and all other issues. But even then, I'll start with that growth and development, why economic growth is important for any economy, then how Indian economy has been performing over a period of time through decades, starting from the independence, and then what is the current growth experience and what are the issues and how to go ahead or what is the way forward. Now when we talk about development, we say that development is a dynamic process. So the process of development transforms an economy from a relatively backward state to a kind of more advanced stage. So while talking about that, a number of things are to be kept in mind. For example, we talk about growth in productivity, growth in income, then a kind of structural change in the economy and the society, institutional changes, changes in the attitude and values of people. All those things are there, which are very much important. And also one thing is that insofar as development is concerned, in many cases, the role of the government is very important. So government has to make
Sir, we cannot hear you. It's not audible.
Hello. I think it is. I think.
Something happened in between.
Yes, sir.
I believe it got disconnected in between, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is disconnected. Now you are audible, sir. Please
Okay.
share the screen.
Yeah. Can you see the screen? No.
No, sir.
Okay. Just give me a minute. Can you see the screen now?
It's coming.
Is the screen visible to you?
No, sir. I started sharing. Yes, now it is, sir.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. Probably I was
Yes,
in this slide, right?
sir.
We talked about actually the alternative definitions of development. For example, human development we talked about. And also we can talk about the sustainable development. In case of human development, we are talking about a holistic approaches towards development issues, combining a number of dimensions. And in the case of sustainable development, we are mostly talking about kind of maintaining a kind of flow of resources for meeting the needs of different generations. Basically, the concept is that the resources cannot be substituted. And so we need to preserve the resources so as to ensure that the kind of benefits or utilities or satisfaction that is derived by the present generation can be derived by the future generation also. And for that, we'll be requiring resources, and these resources are to be preserved. That is basically the idea of sustainable development. Having said this, we can also talk about why economic growth is important. Now, when you say economic growth actually is a kind of numerical kind of dimension of the overall process of growth and development, wherein we try to talk about the income growth mostly. So in terms of per capita income growth, in terms of national income growth. So this growth basically is the improvement in the numerical values of income and assets or wealth, whatever that may be. Growth basically signifies increase income and maybe resource also, because from the income you can always go for resources. So this increased income ensures availability of resources for other issues like socioeconomic issues. For example, we talk about poverty, an economic issue, then other issues, health and education, all those things, social dimensions for which actually we can utilize or maybe allocate more resources, provided we have growth. If growth is affected, then amount of resources available for this type of activities will be lesser and lesser. So when you talk about resources that I referred a few minutes back, in fact, resources can also be considered to be capital. And in fact, for economic development and growth, capital is very important. And mostly we talk about three different types of capital: natural capital, man-made capital, and human capital. But nowadays, we also talk about another form of capital, which is known as the social capital. Natural capital, man-made capital, all of us know it very well. And human capital also we know about very well. In the case of social capital, we basically talk about the kind of trust or kind of mutual understanding between different people in the society at large. So many a time it is believed that the bonding or trust or mutual respect in the society can help achieve a lot of economic benefits as well as environmental benefits. So that is why it is said that in social capital has an economic payoff, and also at the same time it also has a kind of environmental payoff, because certain things can be better achieved or better accomplished when social capital is relatively better. So in case of development process, when you talk about development to be sustainable, we try to understand the fact that all the forms of capital are maintained or preserved over a period of time so as to ensure certain activities being carried out by different generations. Normally, it was believed that the resources are very important, particularly natural resources are very important for development. But it was found later on that actually it's not the natural resources, but the human resources which might be more important from the point of view of development. Now, in fact, observing the performance of different countries in the world, particularly the developing countries, some of the developing countries, there was a theory which was developed by Richard Otti in 1993. So that theory is known as the resource curse hypothesis or paradox of plenty. Basically, it describes the situation, the situation of, in essence, you can say economic performance of some of those countries which are very much rich in natural resources, like minerals and others. So which haven't performed that well in terms of economic growth, development, and also democracy. Now, it's very difficult to explain why it happens so. There are many examples in the world which have failed to reap benefits out of its rich natural resources. We do not have to go far. Even in India, we find a lot of states which are very rich in terms of minerals or other natural resources, but have failed to develop, and they remain as a kind of backloggers or underdeveloped states in the country. But contrary to that, there are many reasons where natural resources may not be in plenty, but they have been able to progress very fast. If we look at Indian situation, we find that the western part of the country, southern western part of the country, and NCR have done remarkably well in terms of economic growth and development over a period of time, whereas many other states which are considered to be very rich in terms of natural resources have lagged behind. And that difference, or maybe kind of gap in between these two regions, in essence, you can say so have been widening over a period of time. So this paradox of plenty is, as I pointed out, is a little bit difficult to explain why it happens so. Probably it might happen because people do not give a lot of attention of better utilization of the resources, and the policies are designed in such a way so as to give a lot of concessions to the people out there, and all those things might result in kind of stagnancy in the economy. Okay, so that might be one of the things. But you see, human capital is considered to be very crucial for development process, and the ideas of people, innovative mind. So these things are very important. When you talk about ideas and innovation, okay, there are a lot of things. So where probably you may not be requiring a lot of resources to start with, but the ideas themselves can help in achieving greater heights. A lot of examples are there. In fact, if you look at, we are accustomed to it, Uber and Ola kind of a thing. We are accustomed to it, Airbnb kind of a thing. So in these cases, what you find is that this Ola company or Uber company may not be owning any vehicle as such, but they are running this transport services to millions of people in different countries in the world. So they are doing it with the help of certain innovative ideas. The same is the case with accommodation provider like Airbnb and so many other things. So these are important for the process of development. Now, if we talk about Indian economy, actually, we can study the performance of Indian economy in different phases. We can talk about Indian economy immediately after independence, then in different decades, like the decade of 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, something like that. And then we can talk about Indian economy after 1991, which is the post-liberalization period, and the very recent stage, so including the stage of COVID-19 period from 2019 onwards. So these are some of the stages, or maybe some of the periods in which we can see the performance of Indian economy. Now, Indian economy, actually, if we look at the very beginning in 1950s, the growth rate was not very high. The priority was to attain self-sufficiency in certain things. Food grain was one of them. So priorities got changed in different plans. For example, in the first plan, we had prioritized agriculture. Then we went ahead with this Nehru-Mahalanobis model of industrialization in the second plan. So that way it went further. Of course, some drastic changes started happening from 1960s fourth plan onwards, you can say so, or just means back towards the end of third plan. You see, we had this green revolution, or maybe new agricultural technology being introduced in the economy. So that had dramatic impact in the agricultural sector. Of course, a little bit later, not immediately during that period, in the early 1980s, actually, as a green revolution spread to different places. And ultimately the benefits started pouring down to different farmers out there. By the time, in fact, when India got independence in 1947, almost the same time, actually, Korea also got independence. It was probably in 1945. Now, there was a lot of euphoria regarding the prospect of economies of India and Korea in the West, particularly in the US during that period. And many people in the US, many people in the academic circle in US, so they were very much upbeat about the prospect of India's economic performance in the future. That time, they felt that India will be able to be a front runner in economic growth, and they will be able to achieve greater heights in due course of time. But regarding Korea, they didn't have that such a kind of promising expectation from Korean economy. They felt that it will become a basket economy kind of a thing where nobody will be bothering to talk about Korean economy. India went ahead with the policy of kind of what will you say, kind of promoting own industries, okay, with the behind the tariff wall kind of a thing. So whereas it's a kind of inward-oriented trade strategy that the government of India started with. Whereas Korea gave more importance or emphasis on outward-oriented trade strategy. By 1970s, things were quite clear that Korean economy was in a position to march ahead with very high rate of growth, whereas Indian economy kind of had to struggle a lot. So it was hovering around 3 to 4% of to be a very promising area for research in the US universities. But by the 1970s, mid 1970s and later 1970s, that was not considered to be worth pursuing a topic in academic circle. So it happened like that. So 1990s, we know about that. Of course, from the economic liberalization in 91 onwards, there had been relatively higher growth in the economy. So if we look at the major shares in Indian economy, we know about the relative importance. So primary sector today, of course, doesn't have very kind of prominent place in the Indian economy, whereas services sector has been predominating, and it's a services sector led growth kind of a thing that we talk about. The share of agriculture over a period of time has been declining, whereas the share of industry has been more or less stagnant. Share of services sector in the economy has been increasing. Of course, this figure is still 2012-13 only. So since 1991, there had been a lot of changes in the Indian economy. Everybody knows about that. Liberalization happened, integration of world economy started happening with the rest of the world. And all those things gave a lot of avenues for Indian products or Indian goods and Indian services, okay? So because following the WTO, trade in services also was one important component of trading. It's not only goods only, but also the services which were also traded out there. So a high growth rate was achieved, particularly in 2006-7. Of course, after that, there was the recession. And this recession, because of recession, Indian economy also suffered. As I pointed out, services sector contributed the maximum. It was around more than 60% in 2012-13. During pre-COVID, if we look into, Indian economy was considered to be the 6th largest economy in terms of nominal GDP, and 3rd largest in PPP mode. Growth rates had been improving. Foreign exchange reserve had been very good. If you look at these 3 figures, that will tell us how foreign exchange reserve have been improving. From 2013 to 2018, there has been significant increase, and from 2018 to 2022, also there has significant improvement. But in recent months, of course, there has been some reduction in the foreign exchange reserve. As of now, in the month of May, to be specific, on May 20, the figure which I have got for foreign exchange reserve for the country as a whole is around $598 billion. So this pie diagram shows the percentage share of the global economy, wherein US dominates, followed by China. Then Japan, Germany, a little bit lesser, much lesser actually compared to China and US. Then UK, then India. So this is how the world economy looks like when we talk about the overall world economy and contribution from different countries in the world. In so far as the transformation of Indian economy is concerned, one thing is to be talked about is that, you see, so we didn't see in Indian growth experience any significant kind of role played by the industrial sector in the decades that we have considered. For example, in the early period, when we talk about early immediately after independence, actually agricultural sector was the dominant sector. But slowly and slowly, services sector started becoming dominant. And now services sector is actually dominating the Indian economy. But nowhere during this period we found manufacturing sector or industrial sector to be the most dominating sector in the Indian economy. In that sense, we can say that the Indian economy has leapfrogged from agricultural sector to the services sector. Probably this is one thing which needs to be looked into a little bit more, because services sector can definitely provide a boost to the economic growth, but at the same time, there might be certain areas in which services sector might be failing. For example, the job creation thing. So job creation is happening, no doubt, but that is not sufficient to cater to the needs of the Indian Indian population. So since manufacturing sector was never an kind of dominant sector in the economy, probably that job creation through manufacturing sector didn't happen in the country so far. So these are some of the figures regarding GDP growth rates. So it has remained consistent, and it had been improving actually till COVID struck. Of course, we'll come back to that. Since 2000-2001, it was on an average around 6% or more than 6% of that. In 2010, after 2010, there were some fluctuations, but it got stabilized later on. And at some point of time, Indian economy was the fastest growing economy, particularly during 16-17 to 17-18. But when the pandemic hit the economy hardest, actually the growth rate has been affected like anything. But luckily, post-COVID, things are improving. In the last financial year, the growth rate recorded in the economy was 8.7%, which is kind of relatively much higher. And it is expected that in the next financial year, the Indian economy will be the fastest growing economy in the world. So this shows the national income of the country at constant prices from 2014-15 to 2020-21. As you can see, till 2019-20, the income was improving. In 2021-22, yes, 19-20, basically 2021, it has gone down. Again in 21-22, the figure has improved. So this is the per capita net national product of India. Basically, this is the per capita income. So at constant prices. So during this period, 1415 to 21, 1920 actually. So during this period, we find the values to be like this. A consistent improvement has been noticed till 2019-20. Obviously, annual growth rate, if you look into, there are certain things. These are the recent figures that we have. You see the growth rate, annual growth rate for net national product for the country as a whole from 2015 to 21, if you look at. You see 15, 16 onwards, 15, 16, 16, 17, the figures were good. So it was actually improving. But 17, 18 onwards, okay, there were certain issues in the Indian economy. The growth rate started actually going down. And of course, during COVID, so there was contraction. Obviously, people know it very well. Same thing happened with the per capita net national product. Okay, so 15, 16 to 16, 17, the growth was positive. But after that, the growth became negative. Okay, growth rate was very small. And growth rate was negative during the COVID period, 2021. Sorry, 2021. This is the sector-wise GDP growth in percentage, 14-15 to 2021. Obviously, we can see how different sectors have been performing over a period of time. Agricultural sector growth rate hasn't been very high. Of course, services sector was very good, but it also started falling since 1920. And industrial sector is more or less okay, kind of having, it's a kind of fluctuating trend kind of a thing. Of course, as you can see, during COVID again, it went down. Now, not the very recent experience of growth, but as a whole, if we talk about the Indian economy post-liberalization, there are a number of things which can be talked about. And Arvind Panagaria, in his book, India, the Emerging Giant, he talked about a number of things which can be looked into insofar as Indian growth performance is concerned. He believed that Indian growth performance continued to be good because of a number of issues. One issue is that post-liberalization, Indian economy is better integrated with the world economy. So obviously, kind of once you are globalized, there are certain advantages. Technological transfer becomes relatively easier. Capital movement becomes relatively easier. So all these things are very crucial for growth and development. So once you have the technology, it's easier for you to go ahead with kind of economic activities. So that better integration helped in achieving relatively higher growth and development. Another thing he talked about is about the demographic transition and rise in working age population. So as we know, India has one of the kind of youngest workforce or youngest population in the world. Obviously, that gives rise to demographic dividend. We can get benefits or reap benefits out of that, out of this young age population. But at the same time, there are issues with this demographic, means in fact, this young age population. If sufficient jobs cannot be created for these people, so this might not be kind of helpful for the economy as well. It will be kind of burdensome for the economy. At the same time, he pointed out that in successive budgets, reforms have been continued. It's not that actually governments are changing and reforms are stopped. It's not like that. And reforms in different forms have continued in the Indian economy. And all these things are positive aspects. And this actually resulted in relatively better performance of the economy in the post-liberalization period. However, as we have seen, just immediately before the COVID-19 struck Indian economy or world economy, there were certain unexpected turns. Growth rate suddenly slowed down to 5% in the financial year of 2019-20. April to June 2018, the growth rate was around 8%, so that quarter. But in the January-March quarter of 2019, the growth rate was 5.8%. So that's a kind of major contraction in the economy. And this contraction happened in many macroeconomic variables. For example, we talk about manufacturing, we talk about construction, and so many other things. Growth in agriculture was also kind of slowing down. In 2018-19, it was around 2.7% from more than 5% in 2017-18. So during that period itself, India slipped down to the 7th position in terms of GDP in the world economic stage. But of course, later on, it regained its status of 6th largest world economy. Okay. So this is what we talked about. Actually, 2016-17, if we take different figures, actually, it was around 8.2%, then 7.2% in 17-18, then 6.8% in 18-19, 19-20, obviously, we talk about kind of 5%. And then again, 2020-21, that was the projection, of course, but COVID struck and so many things were happening out there. What I mean to say is that, you see, although COVID has hit hard the Indian economy, but before that also, there was clear signs of contraction of Indian economy. And it could be seen from the growth trends of the Indian economy over a period of time. And why it had happened, actually, that needs to be looked into. Some of the issues might be structural in nature. Some of them might be cyclical. So all those things combined together had its impact, had their impact on the Indian economy before COVID-19. So this was the stage that time. So insofar as services sector is concerned, services sector is one significant sector in Indian economy. So it has been performing very well. And Indian economy has been doing great in terms of trade in services and other things. Insofar as the subsectors are concerned, certain sectors like financial sector, real estate sector, so those sectors had been doing great. Actually, the performance has been good. The rate of growth has been around 19%, 20% or something like that. Similarly, hotels and restaurants, transport, storage and communication, those sectors also had double-digit growth during this period. Already I told you that growth obviously is important because the resources will be available through growth in the income level. But the job creation may not be equally happening out there. So this is one big issue in case of Indian economy. It has happened in many other countries as well. Not sufficient jobs have been created in different sectors. As I told you, in case of services sector, many of the activities might be requiring specific skills. So this skilled people might be getting certain jobs out there, but not everybody can be accommodated out there. Okay, so for unskilled people, getting certain jobs might be a little bit difficult, but there are different avenues in which jobs can be created. But the issue here is the linkage with different sectors of the economy. If a sector has a great linkage or greater linkage with different other sectors of the economy, then probably it might create jobs in other sectors as well. I'm just giving you an example. When we are talking about transport, for example, we are talking about transport, storage and communication having experienced a relatively higher growth rate, around 10.8%. Now this transportation service will be possible only when there will be goods which will be produced out there. For example, when you talk about transportation as such, it might be transportation of agricultural product, transportation of passengers also, that is okay. But from the point of view of economic goods and others, so we can talk about agricultural products, or maybe we can talk about secondary sector products, manufacturing items, so many things might be there. So if we have to have a great or maybe higher transportation services, for that sufficient amount of production has to take place in different other sectors. So if growth in manufacturing sector happens, so that will result in more output in the manufacturing sector, that might necessitate more transportation services. So that way, in fact, every sector might be interconnected, and the strength of the kind of linkage will determine so how different sectors in the economy might be influenced by other sectors. The greater the interlinkage between different sectors, greater will be the impact on the overall economy through different sectors. So that way, job creation might also be following similar kind of a pattern out there. In fact, it has been pointed out that the kind of growth that we are having so may not necessarily lead to job growth. So it has been pointed out that there is a demand supply mismatch. Okay, accumulated shortage of jobs is considered to be around 80 million jobs. In 2017-18, around 600,000 jobs were created. As I pointed out, demographic dividend may not be helpful if jobs are not created. And when we look into the current data, what we find is that the unemployment rate has been increasing every month. For example, in March 2020, the unemployment rate was around 7.6%. Now in April 2022, in 1 month's period, we found that unemployment rate was around 7.83%. That is what I could gather actually. But there is another table actually which shows over a period of time how things are happening. For example, this is the CMI data sheet. So this CMI actually pointed out that unemployment rate in India has been increasing over a period of time. You see, at certain point of time, of course, unemployment went down a little bit, but again it picked up and it increased. For example, in March 2016, the male unemployment rate was around 5.56%. Although it picked up, it increased to 6.13 in June 16. But by the end of 2016, the figure went down to 3.49. But again, it picked up, and by December 2018, we had an unemployment rate of around 5.4%. So that kind of a pattern we have been seeing. In fact, so that unemployment rate has been on the rise since 2018-19 actually. And today, as I have already pointed out, in April 2022, it has become around 7.83. So that's a relatively high number. So just before the COVID-19 crisis in Indian economy, actually there were certain developments. One development was in the crisis, in the form of crisis in India's automobile sector. Of course, in fact, there was a drop in passenger car sales. So on year-to-year basis, in 2018-19, actually, so there was 30% drop in passenger car sales. Insofar as monthly passenger car sales figures are concerned, it was 9th consecutive. Insofar as the contribution of this automobile sector is concerned, so this industry contributes almost 49% to the manufacturing GDP and around 13 to 14% to the gross, GST of the country. And it employs a huge number of population in its workforce. Now, because of this kind of crisis in the automobile sector, a lot of people had to lose their jobs. Okay, and in fact, so that's a kind of situation which the Indian economy had to face during that period. Obviously, the impact of this or effect of this was to be felt in many other sectors, because certain sectors are heavily dependent on the automobile sector. For example, steel industry, auto part makers, car dealerships, all those things will be affected very badly. And according to the estimates provided, around 300 dealerships had already closed with over 2 lakh workers losing their jobs. So that type of a situation happened out there. So what were the reasons? So literature point out to a number of things. One thing was that weakening growth and demand contraction, also low growth of wages of the people out there. And also another thing happened during that period is infrastructure, leasing and financial services. That organization actually collapsed actually. So this used to be the organization which provided a lot of support to infrastructural projects by way of loans and others. So as a result of its collapse, there was liquidity crunch in the market. So as a result of which actually automobile sector also suffered. Also in case of automobile sector, a lot of stringent environmental laws were implemented. We know about Bharat Stage 6. So this actually increased the cost of the vehicles out there. Okay, so that also had a role to play insofar as demand for the automobiles is concerned. So all those things combined together contributed towards crisis in the automobile sector in the country. Some of the reasons for slowing down of Indian economy just before COVID-19 was something like this. some people believe that some of the reasons are structural. Some of the reasons might be cyclical, which might be happening over a period of time. In case of structural problems, of course, nothing much can be done unless the structural faults are overcome. In case of cyclical problems, of course, things might be a little bit easier to take care of. So global uncertainties definitely are there, so which cannot be controlled by a particular economy, because as we know, all are integrated today. So if something happens today, some ripple, so that can be felt anywhere in the world. Insofar as structural factors are concerned, one important issue was the kind of decline in urban and rural ways growth. So that is pointed out by the literature as one of the most crucial reasons for the slowdown in the economies. So urban and rural ways growth, so that was not actually increasing that much, rather it was slowing down. So that might have an impact in private consumption, because the private consumption will be resulting in demand for the products out there. And in fact, in recent months also, if you look into our recent years, if you look into post-COVID, that is one of the most important things so far as the economy is concerned. So demand is not, effective demand is not very high. With lesser effective demand, okay, so economic growth may not be high. So these are some of the results, some of the reasons for which actually the weakening of growth happened, or slowing down of growth happened in the Indian economy before COVID-19. One was the lack of effective demand. Okay, slowly and slowly, kind of people's demand, or maybe kind of private consumption went down, and that resulted in lesser effective demand. Implementation of and high rate of GST, so that has its influence, obviously. So GST is a welcome move, no doubt, but the way GST was implemented, probably nobody was very much aware. Even today, small traders are not very much aware about the procedures and the way GST has to be actually kind of, the process has to be followed. We also know about US-China trade war, so which actually created a lot of global uncertainties at certain point of time before COVID-19 happened. And in fact, sanctions from US on Chinese products, and sanction from China on US products. So these things actually had a lot of issues with the global trade. Demonetization happened long back. Of course, that also had some kind of issues insofar as certain small traders are concerned. In the case of non-banking financial corporations, so there was liquidity crisis. And of course, later on during the COVID period, the government of India tried to intervene, and they actually tried to go for overcoming the problem of liquidity crisis in NBFCs and also commercial banks. They tried to bring in a lot of money to overcome this problem. Another thing is that over a period of time, the savings rate in the economy has been personal savings. So basically, we are talking about the overall savings also that went down. Now, savings is crucial for investment, because savings through a certain process leads to investment. Investment in capital goods might be having its impact on the overall growth or maybe economic development. So once savings rate is lesser, that will not result in sufficient investment, and obviously that will have its impact on the growth process. So there are two things when you talk about expenditures. One is the consumption expenditure. Basically, it consists of private final consumption expenditure and government final consumption expenditure. Now, insofar as India is concerned, in recent years, it has been pointed out that government financial consumption expenditure probably has been on the rise, no doubt. But insofar as private final consumption expenditure is concerned, so there has been sharp decline during the pre-COVID months. In fact, a lot of reports have also pointed towards that. Very recently, Reserve Bank of India also has come up with one report which has actually pointed out towards lesser consumption, which is one of the reasons for a lower effective demand, resulting in lower growth in the economy. Of course, we are lucky enough that we have been in a position to overcome some of the problems post-COVID. Fall in consumption spending will lead to fall in output and employment, which will result in stagnating economy and deflating prices. Lower prices, if unable to recover the cost, would halt the operations of any farm and would initiate the layoff process. This in turn will reduce earnings further. So it's a kind of vicious circle kind of a thing. Okay. So again, earnings will be less, your consumption spending will be less. So this vicious cycle keeps on repeating until the economy slips into a deeper state of shock. So that has to be stopped somewhere. And for that, actually, intervention will be required, outside intervention by the government. And government post-COVID, so they have been trying to do that through different government intervention measures. So investment is particularly important for economic growth. It has been a key driver of growth since liberalization in 1991. It is induced by both private and government sectors. Gross fixed capital formation, the main constituent of investment in the economy, increased, no doubt. Its contribution to growth has gone down during 2011 to 2014. So we have certain figures to look into how it has performed over a period of time. For example, investment in the economy has gone down from 26.9% in 2011 to 21.4% in 2018. Similarly, if we talk about gross domestic savings, savings are important for investment. So savings has also gone down, considerable change. It has actually reduced considerably during 7 years period. Normally, Indian economy used to have a savings rate above 30% for continuously for a longer period of time, but recently, so that has gone down. So these are regarding the figures of urban and rural wages. Both have actually started declining. So in 2010-11, urban wages were growing at 20.5%, but that growth actually came down to a single digit in 2018-19. Similarly, rural wages that peaked in 2013-14, around 27.7% growth was achieved that time, but the growth was hardly 5% in 2016-19 period. So that way, in fact, kind of many kind of indications of slowing down of Indian economy before COVID-19. So that was seen. So this is a figure regarding the wages, rural wage, corporate wage, and per capita net national income. So that is on the right hand side. Different issues are there. You see, so insofar as MG wage rate is concerned, actually that is also not consistent in some of the states. So minimum wages will be around 122. In some other states, it will be 191. So the growth hasn't been very good out there. And also this implementation of this minimum wages in many states, many studies have pointed out that that has not been uniformly followed. The government has tried to respond by kind of following a lot of things. So they have tried to bring in certain reforms in the banking sector, changes in the corporate tax rates. So they have tried to reduce the corporate tax rate. So obviously, corporate profit tax, that has also come down considerably. And also overall corporate tax rates. So that is now, of course, might be a little bit lesser now. This is a little bit old figure. After COVID-19, we had the kind of worsening situation, as has been pointed out, as has been shown by the data for 2020 and 21. So around 6.6% contraction happened during this period. Of course, that was the situation for all the economies in the world except for China and a few small economies, so which actually had achieved some kind of positive growth. But overall, almost all the economies suffered. And in fact, that kind of influence or maybe impact of that will continue for a considerable period of time. Now, the steps taken by different governments has resulted in global recovery. And so far, the recovery has been considered to be relatively good. As we have seen, the growth rate has been relatively good in 2021-22 for almost all the economies. In case of Indian economy, we have found the growth rate to be 8.7%, which is much better. But the worrying fact is that during the Q4, growth has been very low. So it was around 4.1%. percentage. If we look at one figure, that will be clear. You just see for different economies, actually, the way the economies are achieving growth. Of course, in the fourth quarter, a lot of economies hadn't been able to experience relatively better growth. Insofar as India is concerned, over a period of time, growth rate hasn't been that good. In the fourth quarter, as I already pointed out, the growth rate has been relatively less. It is less than even the US, so which is normally not considered to be having very high rate of growth. Okay, something like this. China has also not achieved very high growth rate that time, but of course, it was slightly, India's growth rate was slightly above the Chinese growth rate. So these are some of the issues actually, so which we can talk about while talking about COVID-19 and Indian economy. For example, overall growth rate has suffered. The growth rate in different sectors, so that has suffered. For example, except for agricultural sector, other sectors suffered like anything during the COVID period. Of course, post-COVID, as we have already seen during 2021-22, so there has been a lot of recoveries in different sectors. If it continues like this, obviously, it will be good for the Indian economy. Of course, one big problem is the unemployment problem. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Actually, according to CMI report, around 10 million people in the country have lost their jobs in COVID second wave. Income decline has happened for 97% of households. That is quite obvious. Okay, so now this thing has to be taken a little bit more seriously, because if we have more unemployed people, so that might result in a lot of conflict. In fact, Marx pointed out that huge reserve army of unemployed, so that might lead to revolution kind of a thing. So that is quite obvious. Conflicts are bound to happen if people are not getting enough of job opportunities out there. So this is a great, big challenge for any economy. So where unemployment has been on the rise, and that post COVID-19, actually, that problem has become more serious. Distribution and income inequality, that is quite acute now, because you see, Indian economy is dominated by MSME sector, and the impact of COVID-19 on MSME sector has been tremendous out there. Many small entrepreneurs had to shut down their business because of lockdown and because of other things which affected their enterprises. Now, with very less income level, the people were not in a position to continue with their businesses or maybe enterprises, so they had to sell it off. Now, once so this selling, once it happens, so the property gets transferred to relatively richer section of the society. That leads to higher inequality in income distribution. Human resource also got affected during COVID-19, as you can see, because today we are in the Zoom meeting. We are doing it because actually the technology has allowed us to do that. So same thing happened in the school education, same thing happened in the college education, but the problem is there are inequalities in availability of resources for different sections of the society. So relatively poorer sections of the society who cannot afford to have kind of laptop, computers, and mobile phones, smartphones to access. So that will have some kind of impact insofar as availing educational facilities out there. And the biggest issue, I believe, from COVID-19 is in the form of public health and health infrastructure, which has actually taken a toll, because the health has been affected like anything. So infrastructure has to be ramped up. So obviously the priorities of the government have also to be changed, and that has changed over a period of time. Then people had to kind of allocate more funds for health and health infrastructure so as to counter the problem of COVID-19. So if we look at the challenges or the problems of the economy post-COVID, so these are some of the problems that we can list. For example, the overall growth in the economy, how to ensure that growth rate is improving or growth rate is stabilized. So of course, in 21-22, we have been able to achieve around 8.7% of growth rate. But whether that can be kind of sustained over a period of time, that is the question. So already we have seen that in Q4, the growth rate was hardly 4.1%, which is not good at all. Now, if this continues, again, the growth rate will be much lower. And the indicators in the form of savings, indicator in the form of investment, so those things are to be looked into. Inflation has been one big issue out there. You see, inflation, we talk about wholesale price inflation as well as consumer price-based inflation, both the things we are talking about. So the geopolitical situation overall, if you look at the world situation, that also has not been very encouraging. Crude oil prices had increased, and availability of crude oil for different countries. So that has also been uncertain because of the certain geopolitical situation in the form of war and other things. So those things had their impact on the domestic economy. So issues might be to achieve higher growth in the economy, to ensure sufficient job for the people so who want to join the workforce, and also to overcome the problem of poverty, or maybe the kind of poverty that people have fallen into. And also the boosting of effective demand, that is important, because many studies have pointed out that this private final consumption hasn't been growing that high. In fact, very recently I went through one article which showed that Indian companies have been able to earn very high profit in recent months. So one figure shows that it was around 9.7% of their total sales. That is the profit they are earning now. But the fact is that you see, the demand hasn't been increasing that much. Okay, and the wages of the people haven't been hiked that much. So wages are not increased. That means their income level may not be increasing that much. So obviously that will not lead to higher effective demand for the products out there. So from the demand side, there are problems. If the demand side problems can be taken care of by boosting effective demand by way of certain government intervention, probably the growth rate can be sustained. So I've been talking about the inflation thing. So inflation as in March 2022, the consumer price inflation was around 7%, whereas wholesale price inflation, okay, so that index was around 14.6% in March 2022. Both are high actually. Now some of the things can be controlled, but some of the things are out of control. In case of wholesale price based index inflation, so many of the things are based on international commodities or maybe kind of international situation. So in those situations, we cannot expect that the prices will come down very easily. Insofar as CPI is concerned, some of the food items are contributing to that. Higher prices of food items are contributing to that. With more supply, a more available supply of the food grains, probably that number might come down. But for international things, this is out of control of the government out there. Obviously, COVID hasn't vanished from the world, so we have to practice coexisting with COVID-19. So that is the new normal now, of course. To overcome the problems of the economy, there should be certain short-term measures as well as long-term strategies. Short-term measures might include some kind of Keynesian approach, boosting of effective demand, cash and in-kind transfer to poor and marginalized people, so who may not be having a sufficient amount. Okay, and of course, in the medium and long term, so the strategy should be in the form of ensuring employment and income generation for the marginalized group, not only for marginalized group, for all those who have been affected by the COVID-19. So already we have talked about the consumption spending or consumption demand. Consumption demand has remained very low, and if it has to be boosted, if it has to be increased, then obviously employment generation and income generation is the priority thing. So that might not happen immediately. That might take a little bit of time. So, but strategies are to be devised in the long term as well as in the medium term to take care of that. In structural issues of Indian economy, already we talk about that the services sector has remained the dominant sector over a long period of time, whereas manufacturing sector hasn't contributed that much. Paul Krugman had talked about, or actually opined, whether India should develop manufacturing sector as well. Of course, there are a lot of issues out there. You see, manufacturing sector today, if we have to develop, it requires a lot of other things also under consideration. Of course, things are changing. Okay, not only technology, other policy interventions are also important out there, so as to make kind of make India as a manufacturing hub, and people might be attracted to invest in India. For that, they will be looking into, investors will look into a lot of other things. Okay, So kind of investor-friendly atmosphere and so many other things. We talk about skill development as a measure of generating employment and also subsequently generating sufficient amount of effective demand. Obviously, that might be one thing because generation of employment everywhere is not possible. Government sector cannot take care of that. Obviously, skill development might be one of the things. It is pointed out that quality of skill of the people at many time hasn't been that good. So some reports point out that around 80% of the engineers are not employable. So if that is the situation, then it's a matter of concern for everybody actually. We need to ensure quality of skill of the people who are joining jobs. Now, growth obviously is one issue. So we need to ensure higher growth, and for that, all those things can be taken care of and should be looked into. And Raghuram Rajan has pointed out that Indian GDP has to grow at around 10% to be able to produce enough jobs for the millions of people joining its workforce every year. Yes, India is a big country. We are adding huge number of population every year. So obviously, to take care of them in the workforce, sufficient growth has to happen out there. Now, how to ensure that is a very difficult thing. Entrepreneurship might be one of them, but okay, it's easier said than done how to ensure that. You see, all of the people cannot be entrepreneurs. Some of them can be entrepreneurs, but for that also a lot of kind of preconditions are to be there. Okay, enabling environment has to be created. For that, the government has a role to play, and at the same time, people should also come forward. They should also be, in fact, thinking about doing for themselves and also creating for in favor of creating jobs for others. So it's not a very easy thing to do, but the fact is that there is not much of a solution, ready-made solution at hand as well. The government cannot provide a lot of jobs. That is not possible. So people have to be kind of proactive, and people may have to think about ensuring this type of activities as well, so that they can earn and they can contribute, and ultimately they can result in higher growth for the economy as a whole. So overall, if we look into the growth is important for overall development, but as you can see, Indian economy has slowed down considerably before COVID-19. After COVID-19, there was a kind of a negative impact, definitely. But it's a sign of improvement for the economy in 2021 and 22. And we will hope that it will continue experiencing higher positive growth rate in the years to come. The realized recovery in 21-22 is the ray of hope. The pandemic has resulted in change in priorities of the resource constrained government. Already I pointed out that actually health sector has been given a lot of emphasis. That's the need of the hour. But at the same time, we need to think about rectifying some of the structural issues of the economy as well. The interventions made so far should have some impact, although it might be in a lagged manner. It's not that instantaneously certain impact will be felt in the economy. No, actually, if some investment is made today, some intervention is made today, so that might have its impact maybe after 1 or 2 years. So obviously, we need to have strategies for long-term and medium-term development as well. And so the interventions which will be made today, so might be having its impact 1 year or 2 years later as well. That is quite obvious. Okay, with this, I would like to thank everybody present here. If you have any questions and comments, we can discuss. Thank you very much.
Dear participants, if you have any questions, please mention in the Q&A box.
Thank you, Professor Dutta. I just joined now. Actually, I missed your presentation due to some important meetings I had to attend. That is why I couldn't participate in our session. But it seems the topic is everybody's topic. The concerns raised by you must be.
Yeah, it's a generic topic that I have chosen actually.
Yeah, it is. That is why it is general topic, but very serious. It seems you raised very serious issues like unemployment, how to address the issues of unemployment, poverty, and now what is bothering the common man nowadays is high inflation, and is the government, instead of trying to control the inflation, the price rise, sometimes I get a feeling that some of the policies of the governments, both union and state governments, some of their policies, are they contributing for further inflation, especially petrol diesel rate hike? That is one issue, and pandemic already affected all our lives very much badly, and though now we are in the process of recovery, still many people, they are out of their job, they're out of their place, their workplace, and still how to address this particular issue of high inflation? And if we are not able to control inflation, what is likely to be its impact on future of India?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Jyoti. In fact, yes, it's a very valid question that you have raised. In fact, I tried to address that issue, but somehow I was not very clear. So one thing is that inflation has been on the rise, that obviously. See, many a time, what happens if we look at the inflation thing, so many a time the demand which creates the problem with the inflation. So you have too much money chasing too few goods. That is one of the definition of inflation. Now, of course, in the current scenario, that is not the case. Actually, people do not have enough money. People do not have enough effective demand. Some of the problems are actually external problem. For example, the petrol product that you have rightly pointed out. So this problem is a kind of external problem. So which is not okay. You see, the government has gone for kind of open pricing for petroleum product kind of a thing. And of course, government also doesn't have enough money. So that is another thing. State governments, for example, if you look into the GST thing, you know it very well now. Is that state governments do not have a lot of autonomy to extract resources from the people. In Assam, actually, the government has gone for a hike in excise duty on liquor again, because there are only two sources. One is the petroleum products and the other one is the liquor. So that's why they are not reducing the prices of, means basically their state taxes, they are not reducing on petroleum products. Although the central government time and again has started, has actually reduced the taxes of basically central government tax on petroleum products. And of course, this Russia-Ukraine war has also contributed to some extent. But of course, the problem will be eased a little bit now because Russian oil is available with the Indian government now. So I believe slowly that problem will be taken care of. But insofar as consumer price-based inflation, so that should not be very worrisome thing. Of course, one thing there is one international angle. For example, we talk about this soya, sunflower oil actually.
Edible
so that
oil,
is
yes.
one thing actually. So that is the supply of that has reduced.
Edible oil,
basically.
Yeah.
So that is one thing which is contributing towards this consumer price-based inflation actually. Unless we have an alternative to that, actually, this CPI can also not be controlled immediately. That is another problem actually. The government also has come up with a report. RBI report has actually explained these things a little bit better. So these are the things. Immediately, of course, we cannot say much because the government constraint is that they do not have enough of resources and they have to improve the effective demand also. But the private consumption expenditure hasn't gone up that much. That means effective demand hasn't been that high. So it's not a problem of demand side inflation kind of a thing. It's a kind of supply side kind of a thing in a sense, you can say so. So constraint, basically international constraints are also there to some extent. Kind of domestic problems are also there insofar as inflation is concerned. that is one big thing. Immediately, we do not see any solution to this problem. But
Yes.
if geopolitical situations improve, probably it will be a little bit favorable. Ultimately, in that case, it will be better for all of us.
Thanks, Professor Datta. Dr. Gurram, you can take some questions. Some questions are there in the chat box.
Yes, sir.
and the
There are some
Q&A.
questions in chat box.
Please
sir.
take some
So,
questions.
sir, for the revival of MSMEs, what steps should be taken from the government side? Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, that is one question. Other questions also you read once. Yeah, other questions also. Then
Okay, sir.
Professor will take some questions. Yeah, whatever questions there so just read out some
Okay,
questions.
sir. I'll read. I think he is okay.
Okay.
Reconnected again.
Professor joined. One is about how to revive MSME sector. That is one question. Then what are other questions?
And is the manufacturing sector overarching in importance over service sector, especially now that government has done away with the service sector definition?
Read the question again.
Is the manufacturing sector overarching in importance over service sector?
It is not
Over
happening.
service sector, right?
Yeah, it is not happening, unfortunately. Okay. Any other questions? These are two questions.
Next, sir. Do you think that the Indian trade has increased with the South Asian countries in medicine and related items, especially during and after COVID-19?
Okay.
Yes,
Do you think
And so far as
Indian trade
MSME
has increased?
question is concerned, if I take up that one actually, you see, we know it now. The role of MSME, everybody knows actually. Around 45% of the kind of GDP might be coming from MSME sector only. Now, how to revive that? That is the big question. Okay. See, first of all, I feel that you see the kind of provisioning that the government has made. So that is mostly kind of loan-based kind of a thing. So you take loan where the concessions will be there, mostly kind of that kind of a thing. It's not kind of subsidy kind of a thing, or maybe direct help kind of a thing is not there in the policies. Probably there is a need for these people to have kind of direct pumping of money into the sector by of certain strategies or certain policies. Because you see, whenever there is a kind of provisioning of loan, the people have to think about their capacity to repay back the amount also. Now, if I know that my capacity is limited because of COVID-19, then obviously I'll not be tempted to go for borrowing more money from the bank. That is not possible. Okay, so I could see the kind of policies that government announced during 2020 lockdown period was more towards borrowing of money from the banks. And banks were encouraged, and BFCs were encouraged to provide the loans to MSME sector. But I feel instead of that, the government should be a little bit more forthcoming, and government should probably pump in more money directly, actually, by way of maybe probably subsidies also, they might be encouraged. Or maybe, of course, subsidy as such may not be so good, but the fact is that looking into the situation of the MSME sector, probably some direct intervention in the form of investment or maybe kind of provisioning of subsidies may be required out there in MSME sector. As I pointed out, there were a lot of income inequalities because of that, because many micro enterprises had to shut down because of not having enough of a capital base. Okay, so they could not survive, and ultimately, so this will be actually changing hands to some rich entrepreneurs. So that is why if we have to revive that, obviously some support in certain form is to be there. It should not be only borrowing, because borrowing has its limitations. Okay, so that is my obvious suggestion about MSME sector. In so far as manufacturing sector, that question I could not understand properly actually. So what the participant wanted to ask, that was not very clear. What I understand is that manufacturing sector had a huge opportunity post COVID-19, I believe, because there were a lot of things where world economic order was to be changed. China is definitely at the center of the world economy as of now, but there was a little bit of scope for Indian industries to take advantage out of the COVID-19 situation. But somehow I do not think that has happened so far. One thing is for sure, any industry has to depend on Chinese products. I'm not talking about raw material, actually comes some secondary products for anything. So without depending on China, we cannot do anything as such. And Chinese economy, if you look into, in 2000, I believe Chinese economy was not so dominant, but today it has overwhelming dominance in the world economy. So they have gone ahead with certain planning. For Indian manufacturing sector, probably that hasn't happened at any point of time. I gave you the example, right? I told you that Indian economy has gone for kind of inward-oriented trade strategy, wherein we try to develop our own industries by having a huge tariff wall. Okay, so we didn't try to be competent enough, rather we tried to protect our industries. So that type of strategy actually backfired for Indian economy. And probably we have not given enough importance to the manufacturing sector so that we can actually be world competitive in the world market, and probably we have failed to do so. Regarding Indian trade with the East Asian countries, of course, India's trade with ASEAN countries was always very high. And of course, I don't have the specific data about the trade. I cannot comment upon that. It might have increased. That has to be verified. But the fact is that pharmaceutical companies have a lot of scope to trade now. So that is quite obvious. I agree with that. But the fact is that I don't have the data to support this argument. Probably, so once you look into the data, we can corroborate whether that is correct or not. Okay.
Sir, and one more question, sir. The COVID impact, how far it will affect on Indian economy as well as global economy? You already explained it. You already explained it through the slides also somehow.
That cannot be actually predicted beforehand. It's a problematic thing. But the fact is that you see the kind of trauma that the economy had witnessed, the kind of situation that the people had witnessed during first phase of COVID-19, actually, that will never be repeated, I believe. I don't think that will happen. So we have learned to coexist with COVID. Obviously, the impact will be there, definitely. So unless we can take care of the wages and employment of the people out there, that impact will continue. Because you see, unless we can improve the effective demand of the people by improving the consumption expenditure of the people, private consumption expenditure we are talking about. Government final consumption expenditure is a different thing. Government will actually consume some of the things. So that is improving, but final consumption, that actually we need to somehow enhance the salaries and wages of the people so that so they can demand more, so their consumption expenditure increases. So that will increase only when their income level goes up. So somehow the government strategy should be something like that. So if we can ensure that effective demand is increased, then probably people will also go for kind of taking more loan. Okay, banking business will also be much better. So all those things are interrelated things. So once that happens, everything else will be having this kind of linkage effects. So one sector will be leading to having its impact on the other sectors. That way it goes around. So it's difficult to tell, but so what I see is that the global recovery has been really good, and probably people have learned to live with COVID. So if that happens, I don't think this effect will continue for a very long period of time. Within 2-3 years, probably it can be overcome. That is my humble kind of expectation only.
Professor Dutta, one question from my side, not about economics, but about your academics, in the sense, from your biodata, I could learn that you worked fairly long time in Dibrugarh University.
Yeah.
And now we are in IIT Guwahati, and we all know IIT Guwahati is doing very well, one of the best IITs in the country. How it changed your job satisfaction? How it impacted your job satisfaction and your role as economist?
You see, I was very junior when I was in Developmental University. Actually, what happened immediately after passing my master's, I joined the job there since I got it. So that was my formative stage, actually. When I joined IIT Guwahati in 2003, actually my research career started from there, because the environment is really good out here, and that encouragement helped me a lot. And in fact, I have been part of a lot of professional bodies also nowadays. Last year, I became one of the executive members of Indian Society of Agricultural Economics also. So that way, in fact, a lot of exposure has happened out here, and my research journey actually got a boost when I joined IIT Guwahati. Interaction and other things. Basically, you see.
The net is not stable, I think. Net is not stable, I think. Hello, Professor Dutta, you are there? Yes, some connectivity issue, I think, Dr. Gurram.
Yes, sir. Previously it was happened also.
Yeah,
Maybe he will rejoin again.
Yeah.
Dr. Gurram, you may conclude the session because
Yeah.
okay, he joined again.
Yeah. Just we
again.
some connectivity issue. Dattaji, yeah, please.
Yeah, probably I can hear you.
Yeah.
Probably there is.
Please continue, Professor Datta.
Yeah. There might be some connectivities out here.
Yeah.
I don't know what is happening.
Yeah. And now fine. It's just because why I asked that question is we have very young faculty here, and because your experience with your university and some experiences in our career, certainly your experiences would inspire and would motivate the younger faculty. That is why if you could say something, because there are faculty members from economics, commerce, and management here, and maybe from research point of view and from academic teaching point of view, and how should they develop their career, and how should they make their work more happy and more productive?
No, it's a very difficult question actually. It's not very easy to answer. What we can do probably, if it is possible, we can have some collaboration with the department there. For example, economics is one of the departments, and we have in our department around 8 faculty members in economics. So starting from senior person like Professor Barbara to relatively junior people. So probably some collaboration can happen. And okay, with that, probably maybe kind of more collaboration, more interaction will help both the year. And IIT Guwahati also has a commitment towards the region, because it is the only IIT in Northeastern region. So it has tried to have some kind of collaboration with many universities in the region. Probably at personal level we can start, and then we can go for kind of official level collaboration. That is also possible. We can carry out some research work together if it is possible. So those things are possible out here. And if your department fails, or maybe if your kind of all the streams can think of, we can join hands in some of the works. That is possible.
Thank you so much.
If some of your research scholars want to visit IIT Guwahati and want to interact with our faculty members, that is also possible. I can arrange for that. Don't worry about that.
Thank you so much. Dr. Gurma, I think he answered all the questions, including the latest one. I think he already answered. Ukraine, impact of Russia-Ukraine war on economy, world economy. I think he touched upon that aspect.
Yes, sir.
So you may please conclude.
Okay, sir. Sir, thank you very much for your time providing to us, and for giving so much of explanation on doubts. And even my personal doubts were cleared during the session itself. And it's we are very thankful to you, sir, and providing such a vast information about the economic development and MSME sector also. And we may collaborate even further also, sir. Definitely.
Yeah. Please be in touch. We can always do that.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Okay. From my
Thank
side,
you.
I thank all of you, particularly Professor Jyoti Kumar, who has
Thank you.
actually
Namaste.
invited
Thank
me
you.
to this. And actually, I had a difficult time because what happened, let me tell you. I was invited for one faculty recruitment for today and tomorrow. Actually, I didn't notice that I was invited for today also. I thought that it was on 7th. So when they called me 3 days back, I was in a state of shock what to do. Somehow I could manage it. I had
Okay.
2 PhD presentation today, so I had rescheduled that. And it is in the city, so it requires
Okay.
around 30 kilometers from here. And during daytime, traffic is very large, very huge. Somehow I could navigate and I could be present here in time. Otherwise, so that's why I told you that. So it might be delayed by a few minutes, right?
Miss,
But,
I think.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
maybe
No,
you missed it.
You
Recruitment?
started on time, sir.
Yeah. I
started
started on
on
time. I started on. I could manage
Yes,
to do
sir.
that.
This also
Thank
we
you
should
very
learn.
much.
Sir, this also we should learn from you, because very easily we say we are very busy in that work, in this work, in that work. No, we try to search for some excuses for not doing something. But you managed it because you promised and you wanted to deliver it, and you managed it, and that is what we have to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Okay. That is our professional commitment, no? So once we give the commitment, we need to respect that, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving me the chance. See you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you. So we can conclude. So I think today is a very productive day, and myself, Professor Bhartendra Singh, we were attending a school board meeting because in our university at the school level there would be a meeting. It is a board of studies at school level, and normally very difficult being a professors. Very difficult for me and for Professor Bhartendra Singh to skip that meeting. That is why we attended that meeting. And anyway, I think Dr. Gurram, I think that is why I requested my colleague to Gurram to coordinate the things in our absence. Any specific things, Dr. Gurram, to address?
No, sir.
So we can call it a day.
Okay, sir.
So tomorrow morning again we will meet, and hope all the participants are in the process of writing their research paper. Please don't try to write just 2 days or 3 days before the timeline. So one fundamental thing in research is we should do it continuously. Let us not try to do it in the 11th hour. Okay. So we have given time up to 12th. So I think only few words we asked you to write, 3,000 to 3,500 words. Why we mentioned not very long research papers? Because of time constraint, and it should be based on secondary data, and it should be of your original. That is why quality is more important, not just quantity of data. So hope all have started writing their research paper in your own area of interest, but it should be of contemporary nature. Okay, so thank you all.
Okay, sir. From my side, thanks to HRDC and thanks to you, sir. Thank you.
So thank you all. So thanks HRDC staff and also my colleague Professor Bhartendra Singh. Okay, thank you. Namaste. So we may leave now. We may leave.